I was born in Iowa and grew up in a family of 4 girls. I thought I knew God, but it wasn't until later after I was married that I actually had a relationship with Jesus. I had some abuse at 14, so I came into our marriage with some trust issues. I definitely had baggage walking into a marriage with my husband.
So I grew up in Germany. I did not grow up knowing my father for the first 6-7 years. When my mother divorced my German stepfather, who I thought was my real father at that time, was the first time I'd met my real father. Eventually, my family moved us to the States, and my father passed away in a drowning accident. I want to say 4th or 5th grade, I started going to church. Right around the age of 14, I was sexually abused by another man, and having that be your first person-to-person physical sexual contact, that just kind of screwed me up for a long time. And I learned to be in secret from that. Well, I probably already knew how to live in secret prior to that, but that really forced some things into the underground that plagued me the rest of my life.
Mike and I attended a junior college in Iowa. He asked me out in my freshman year of college. We were really young, 18 and 19 years old when we started dating. So yeah, we were married in December of 1991. It was pretty volatile. We both definitely came in with our own baggage and our defenses up, and we both just didn't quite trust the other person to be there for us and to be safe.
A selfish marriage. It was one where it was about constantly looking for the other person to validate you. It was one where if they didn't, then by God, through a fight, you were going to get there. You're going to validate me, woman, or, you know, however. We got really good at it. Obviously, the stress of marriage was picking up with a child. I was working in social services, which was a pretty dead-end job, and financially wasn't there. So we decided to move to Texas and move in with my in-laws. So during this particular time, pornography, you know, I mean, was more in the strip clubs and those types of environments. So when you could get away with the buddies, that's where you went. Getting online, going into AOL chat rooms, and that's where that part of, you know, my addiction started coming out.
And at that time was actually when I came to faith. So we were attending a church, and that's when I came to a realization of grace. So fast forward to about 3.5 years ago. We have now lived in 5 states. We've traveled a lot with Mike's new job, and we have 4 children, and we're just settling into a life here, and we've been here a number of years. I had a normal night. I dropped my son off at football, Little League, and I brought my daughter to church, and I went home to pay some bills, and I walked downstairs to the computer, and a screen had been left up. And I'm not tech savvy, but it was left right in front of me. I was shattered, devastated, really. He came home, and I confronted him, and I asked him to leave, and we were separated, so.
And my world just literally started falling apart at that point in time. And I mean, you gotta remember, she just saw a video screen. She doesn't know the whole story. Well, pretty much the next, what, how many weeks?
It was a month.
Yeah,
it was about a month of discovering the truth.
Yeah.
I really had to turn my life over to God at that point because I was just devastated. And I reached out to friends who I knew were strong Christians, and I reached out to the church the next day, and I asked for counsel to know what to do. I spent a lot of time in God's Word, And I spent a lot of time digging through the computer. It was about a month later that Mike finally told me everything, like ripped the Band-Aid off, told me everything that had been going on in our marriage.
Yeah, things that weren't on the computer, you know, the multiple affairs, what time it started, all of those things would not have been discovered.
We would have these talks, and I would be a mess. I would be still in just acting and reacting out of pain sometimes. Sometimes God gave me the grace to just be there and be present and let him know I loved him still. But sometimes I would react out of pain. And one of those times, he got on his hands and knees. And I remember I was just a mess and crying and screaming and swearing and just not handling things well. And I looked down and he was quiet. And generally Mike was incredibly defensive. Was so different this whole process from the time I found out he wasn't defensive, he just left when I asked him to this time he was on his hands and knees and he was quiet. And I looked down and his eyes were closed. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm praying for you. I don't know what else to do. I can't fix it."
It's hard to know that you caused this level of pain in a person you love, you know. I couldn't fix this. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I decided early on to go to God's Word. And I was a mess, wasn't perfect, definitely, it's a journey. But there was a decision I made that I would follow what God's Word said. And I remember praying specifically, "God, it's so easy to make my heart hard because I don't want to be hurt. But please help me keep my heart soft." And I had to pray about that a lot through the whole process. But I prayed God would soften my heart towards my husband and towards what we were going through. That and the counsel I received from people who love God are what encouraged me to stay, and I decided to stay in my marriage because I saw my husband was also in a place of brokenness, just like I was broken. And I knew that God could still work in it, and it gave me hope.
For the first time, I really understood grace just in the example that Wendy was giving me.
So November of 2018, just this last year, we renewed our vows. It was something that was very important to me, and that was very important to us as a couple to do in front of our children and in front of the people who had loved us and given us both grace and cared for us through this whole process. And it was a celebration of coming through a very hard part of our journey together, and that we still wanted to be with one another, and we still wanted to walk forward in the journey we were in and to let God lead it.
I love the men in my life. They went through my war with me. At times they carried me. They stayed with me in hotel rooms when I was alone. They didn't judge me. They just loved on me. And God put these people in my path a long time ago to prepare for the day when this was all happening. I'm convinced of that. I'm just convinced of that.
I believe marriage is sacred, and I believe it's worth fighting for.